Prior to the opening of the Weinberg Center, we did pretty extensive research on what other models existed. And in the few instances that we found where there were emergency shelters that supported older adults, what we found was often they could not take people who had any kind of medical needs. So the Weinberg Center, the shelter is virtual in nature. And what I mean by that is there's no four walls that define the shelter. People, when they're admitted into our program, their medical condition is assessed and they are placed in a neighborhood in the long-term care facility that's appropriate for their medical care, so that the medical team can provide the best care for them in a neighborhood with other people who are similarly medically situated. So when assessing shelter and looking at this vignette, there's a couple things that we don't know that would be important. One is that I'm not sure about her physical abilities in the house. And we need to kind of assess that situation before we think about her leaving the home. It's unclear what her mobility is, and it looks like she's in a wheelchair. And so I don't know how she gets around. It also seems a little bit, without assessment of capacity, that she is confused. She asks him about work, he talks about work, and then at the end, she asks him if he's going to work. And so that raised some red flags for me about whether she's confused, what she understands, has there been some diagnosis. And that's really important because we always consider the self-determination of victims. You know, does she understand what's happening? Would she want to leave? Does she feel unsafe? And if so, does she have the capacity to make the decision to leave? These would be some of the things that we would think about in if shelter's appropriate for her. Right now, I don't think she would want to come. Right now, I think what she wants to do is work around him to make it okay for them. There's a range of feelings of people when they come into the shelter. I think almost universally, the shelter is the place of last resort. It means that there's really nowhere else to go that is safe, that can provide the care and support that an older adult needs who's been victimized. That said, once they come into the shelter, they're surrounded by professionals who care for older adults, who really care about older adults, a community of older adults. And certainly my team is advocating for them from the minute they arrive to support whatever their needs may be. And one of the things that certainly the domestic violence world has taught us about advocacy for victims is the earlier the intervention of advocacy, the greater support a person feels from the advocate, the more likely they are to go through to support their own advocacy, and the end result is ultimately much better. So we see that works particularly with having legal services provided right away, therapeutic care, and coming into a place that's about healing and care. One of the benefits of having the shelter in this model is that we've seen victims who become long-term care residents. So I see them coming from a place of complete victimization and suffering to actually, far along the continuum of healing and alleviation of suffering. So that's a pretty incredible thing to see and to know people who really transform from the experience. Our average length of stay is about 90 to 120 days. Some people will go back into the community. So this mother, maybe we help her get an order of protection and we get her back home. Some people decide to transfer to long-term care. Maybe staying in a nursing home is the best discharge plan for them. Other people, maybe this mom has another son or daughter who lives somewhere else who may be willing to care for her, and we help that discharge happen as well. We've had some great success nationally in terms of replicating the shelter model. We created it with the hope of being able to replicate it in different places.